In ancient times, there were powerful gods and magic in the world. The last demon lord, Leonis, ruled a city, and a war broke out between his strong army and 6 heroic individuals. Leonis had formidable skeletal soldiers, but the heroes had special powers, including the ability to heal. Inside his castle, Leonis received news that other fortresses had fallen, and his castle was likely the next target. Outside, a massive tree-like creature and a dragon joined the battle. This angered Leonis, and he was ready to use a powerful staff to defeat his enemies. However, his loyal companion, Blackys, reminded him of a promise he made to the goddess Rhyslia when he was human. As his castle was under attack, Leonis decided to honor his promise to the goddess. He dropped his staff and accepted defeat. This was a difficult choice for him, but he pledged to return from the dead in 1,000 years to reclaim his throne. 1,000 years later, 2 girls explored the castle's ruins. Rhyslia and Regina were on a mission to investigate underground ruins that had emerged due to an earthquake. They were looking for creatures called voids but could only fight to protect themselves. While exploring, they found a fallen statue and wondered if they were in a tomb. Rhyslia thought about the possibility of finding a lonely great king's burial site. They came across a sealed door, and Regina tried to open it without success. They considered breaking it open but noticed ancient writing on it. Regina went to explore the place, while Rhyslia began translating the inscriptions, and to her surprise, the door started opening when she touched it. Inside, Rhyslia found a crystal with someone trapped inside. She decided to help this person. Back in the past when Leonis met Rhyslia, the rebellion goddess, to whom he had made a promise. During a war, he explained that heroes were attacking his kingdom, and he chose to seal away his own soul to keep his promise to Rhyslia. She was pleased that he remembered their pact and left, telling him to find her in the future. Nowadays, Rhyslia decides to free the person trapped in the crystal and starts shooting at it to break it open. Inside the crystal, Leonis wakes up and wonders about the noise. He's angry because the tomb should have been sealed, but he realizes that the reincarnation ceremony has succeeded, and 1,000 years have passed. He hears Rhyslia outside and uses language analysis magic to understand her. She's yelling about freeing him, and Leonis thinks she's just a foolish grave robber. He intends to show her his demon lord power and starts using a powerful spell to break free from the crystal. However, when Rhyslia wakes up and asks what a child is doing there, he stops. To his shock, he finds himself in the body of younger self, not his demon lord form. Leonis tries to use a spell to reincarnate himself to the demon lord, but somehow it fails and he remains in his old human form from when he was known as Leonis the Brave, a human hero. Rhyslia checks if he's okay, and he's angry at her disrespectful behavior towards a demon lord. However, he eventually finds comfort in her presence and faints. Later, Leonis eats some cookies Rhyslia gives him and resents his new body for fainting from hunger. He also dislikes how comfortable he felt when she hugged him, but he acknowledges that this girl may have saved his life. Rhyslia introduces herself as a 15-year-old knight of the Seven Soul Swordsman Training Academy and asks for Leonis's name. He decides not to lie about his name since it's a proud one given to him by someone special. He tells her his name is Leonis, but she finds it adorable and calls him Leo, which infuriates him as his name used to represent chaos and terror. Rhyslia assumes that Leonis was locked up by the Void, but he has no clue what the Void is. She explains that the Void is an enemy of humanity that appeared 64 years ago, attacking relentlessly. Knights like her protect humanity from them. Leonis is puzzled because in his time, demons like him were the enemies of mankind, and he realizes that his history as the demon lord must have been forgotten. She tells him she's there to investigate a void nest and found him by accident. Suddenly, they hear a loud explosion, and Regina informs them that she has engaged with a large void manifestation. Rhyslia shields Leonis from the collapsing room and vows to protect him. An ogre-class void breaks in, and Rhyslia prepares her weapon. Leonis, the great demon lord, attempts a powerful spell to erase the ogre, but he trips and falls flat on his face. He curses his weak human body, and Rhyslia worries that her weapon might not be enough to defeat the void. As Regina's bazooka blast takes down the void's arm, Rhyslia explains that she'll fill her in on the details later. The remaining void is still a threat, so Regina changes her weapon's mode. Although Leonis can't discern the weapon's nature, he's certain it's not magic. Regina uses the weapon to create a hole in the void's chest. Despite the apparent wound, the void remains alive, prompting Regina to instruct Rhyslia to take Leonis and find safety. As they flee, Leonis contemplates how everything has gone awry. The reincarnation didn't proceed as planned, and he's now in a vulnerable mortal form. His kingdom is far from restored, and monsters are desecrating his castle. While he's confident in his ability to defeat these creatures, he refrains from displaying his powers. Concealing his identity as the Demon Lord is crucial because Reincarnated is a valuable source of information about this unfamiliar world. Amidst their escape, they encounter a wyvern-class void. Reincarnated is terrified, noting that this wyvern is unlike any she's encountered before. She urges Leonis to flee, but instead, she transforms her gun into a sword. Leonis accepts the situation, acknowledging his role as a forgiving Demon Lord. He begins to prepare a powerful spell that could end the battle, but Reincarnated pushes him to the ground to protect him. Reincarnated diverts her attention to the void, but it injures her. Leonis rushes to her side. She instructs him to find Regina and escape. As her life slips away, Leonis can't help but think she acted foolishly. He had been using her to gather information about the world, and she had needlessly sacrificed her life, even though the attack wouldn't have harmed him. He considers her bravery to be foolish but privately admits he's developed a small fondness for the courageous girl. Several voids surround Leonis, but their attacks are utterly futile against the formidable magic barrier wielded by the great Demon Lord. Leonis, increasingly frustrated by his return to human form and the resurgence of his emotions, now fueled by anger, decides to summon his staff. He declares that the voids are deserving of punishment. His first spell manifests as a massive gravitational orb that crushes one of the voids. He informs them that they will all be held accountable for their actions. The void attempts to resist but is swiftly overwhelmed, with Leonis reducing the creature to nothingness. Another mindless creature attempts to assail Leonis, seemingly oblivious to the impenetrability of his barrier. Leonis weaponizes his barrier, sending multiple spikes through the creature's body. The final remaining void attempts to flee, but Leonis is determined not to let it escape. He unleashes a devastating fire spell that engulfs the void in flames, ultimately consuming it. Leonis emerges victorious, but he notices that the remnants of the creature's bones are left behind. This outcome surprises him since even against the most formidable monsters in the past, such an effect had never occurred. It dawns on him that he only possesses 1/3 of his full power in his current human form. Leonis returns to Reincarnated's side, finding her barely clinging to life. Despite his usual indifference toward human life, Leonis holds a deep respect for noble souls. Reincarnated had valiantly defended him with her life, and her unwavering spirit had left an impression on him. Leonis acknowledges that he isn't skilled in using basic healing spells but excels in all forms of magic related to death. He decides to do what he can to help her. Employing a spell, he restores her lost blood, and a peculiar mark on her leg vanishes. Leonis wonders how Reincarnated will react when she discovers his true identity as the Demon Lord. He contemplates whether she will become angry or despondent. Once the spell is complete, Reincarnated remains unconscious, and Regina frantically attempts to send her a message. Leonis realizes that it's a remote magical communication device, though he doesn't understand how it functions. He's impressed by the advanced magical technology developed by mankind. At that moment, Reincarnated regains consciousness and immediately expresses her relief that Leonis is safe. Leonis finds this reaction strange since people typically prioritize their own well-being first. Reincarnated, too, is shocked to discover that she's alive, as she had been convinced that her stomach had been severely injured. Leonis explains that her wound wasn't as deep as it had appeared, and he had healed it using sacred magic. Reincarnated is puzzled when Leonis mentions magic, as she observes that during their fight, the girls hadn't used spells. It becomes evident that they can't use spells and instead rely on their advanced magical weapons. Reincarnated assumes that when Leonis spoke of magic, he must have been referring to the power of the Holy Sword. However, Leonis remains in the dark about this concept. Reincarnated explains that some holy swords possess healing abilities and believes this might be why the void captured him. Leonis remains confused, so Reincarnated elaborates on the holy sword's origins. A few years after the emergence of the void, humanity faced imminent defeat. However, some children began to exhibit peculiar powers, with many of them taking on the form of weapons, hence the name Holy Swords. Regina wields a holy sword named Dragon Howl. The reason for the existence of these weapons is shrouded in mystery, but it seems that they often reflect the personality of their wielders, a weapon that embodies the soul. Reincarnated reveals that she hasn't yet received the power of a holy sword, which clarifies why she was using a magical tool in battle. Leonis recognizes that his magical abilities are nothing like the holy sword's powers and decides it's best to keep his true capabilities a secret from everyone. Regina returns, curious about what happened to the void they encountered earlier. Leonis concocts a lie, claiming that he was trembling in fear of the terrifying monsters, and before he knew it, they all depart from the ruins on a motorcycle. During the ride, Regina continues to tease Leonis, believing that startling him might trigger the return of his lost memories. Leonis tolerates her playful behavior and privately wonders how an immortal demon lord could be so easily teased by a girl. As they approach their destination, Resilia explains that it's the last fortress built by mankind to combat the void, the Garden of the Seven Sacred Swords Academy. Leonis is awestruck by the place and realizes that this is the new world, 1,000 years distant from his own. What will Leonis do? Will he get his glory back? Subscribe to watch the new coming videos, like the video if you enjoyed it. And see you in the next one.